Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And there have been a bunch of things that have come out recently about Bryan Kohberger. One set of media stuff has been about the roommates and texting and the 911 call. And the other is more stuff about Bryan Kohberger and evidence that might link him to the crime. Now, as I start, I want to say, first of all, because everybody always says, but you can't say he's guilty of anything. He hasn't gone to court. No, he's not legally guilty of anything. He's going to be going to court. I believe it's in August. And that is for it will play out in court and the jury will decide. However, it doesn't mean we can't have opinions prior to the case arriving in court, because certainly everybody does have opinions, and I as a profiler do as well. And I analyze the evidence and suggest what is the most likely thing to have happened, and then we'll see if it's proven in the court of law. Now, first of all, what I want to say is I am not going to talk about the roommates. I find what I've read online abysmal and mean. And the people who basically are going on and saying the roommates are lying and they're somehow involved in this crime, they believe that Bryan Kohberger is not guilty of the crime, that he has nothing to do with it. At least, they believe that I guess the DNA was planted. And he's just being picked on because he's autistic, which is what his defense team is even saying. So they are now they're saying, "Oh, don't look at this guy. Look at these roommates." And I'm sorry. To me, that is absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. The roommates were not involved in murdering their roommates. Okay, it makes zero sense, especially since his DNA is at the scene. At least that's what's alleged. What did these roommates do? Did they don't even know this guy, but somehow they got hold of his DNA, got hold of his knife, got hold of his... No, let's not be silly. So, but a lot of people are being silly. And it's just something new that's been happening because the internet has allowed so many voices that whenever any crime occurs, now there's a huge bunch of people pop up and say, the person who did it, or I won't say did it, most likely did it, absolutely didn't do it, Luigi Mangione. There's a video of him shooting down the CEO. But there's people out there who say he didn't do it. Now, you can say, let's wait till court to absolutely be sure. I'm okay with that. Let's let the state prove their case. That's fine. But on the other hand, to just ridiculously state, oh, there's no way that person had anything to do with it, when there's some pretty darn obvious evidence. It's just why they were arrested and charged. It's, unless it's some completely freaky thing. We have two cases here, the Luigi Mangione case and the Bryon Kohberger case, which evidence is pretty damn strong. All right, so is it believable somebody else killed the Idaho 4? It's not very believable. It's not. It's just not very believable. As a criminal profiler, I see no evidence that anybody else was involved outside of the evidence that points to Bryan Kohberger, which is overwhelming in my opinion. So now we have some new information that came out. I'm going to read a little bit from the AP and just comment on that. A flurry of court documents filed this week in the case of Bryan Kohberger, the man charged in the killings of 4 University of Idaho students in 2022. It takes a long time to get to court, doesn't it? I mean, it's like 3 years. Offers new details about how the case against him is shaping up. All right, so it says here, Kohberger, then a criminal justice graduate student at Washington State University, was arrested in Pennsylvania weeks after the killings. Investigators said they matched his DNA to genetic material recovered from a knife sheath found at the scene. Okay, this number one is the biggest piece of evidence that is strongly indicating he was involved. Why is this? Well, unless somebody who knew him had access to his knife sheath and planted it at the scene, then he was at the scene with his knife. And when you look at the Amazon issue, then it's really hard to get away from that is probably the person who was at the scene with the weapon. Let's go further. So here's some new stuff. They show the documents that prosecutors intend to introduce evidence of Kohberger's click history at Amazon.com, showing he purchased a K-bar knife, a military-style fixed-blade knife, along with a sheath and a sharpener in March, 8 months before the killings. A K-bar knife was found next to one of the victims. Okay, so one of the stupid things that killers do is that they don't imagine getting caught for some reason. And not even so much that they may have an idea it would be fun to do this particular mass murder. It'll be pretty cool. And so they start thinking about it and they start Googling stuff and they start going to Amazon and buying stuff because they haven't really gotten to the point where they're absolutely moving forward with the crime. And they seem to not understand that history is going to be there. So, one of the foolish things that criminals do is leave a breadcrumb trail on the internet of their thoughts, their plans, and their purchases. So he did that. Further, prosecutors say the Amazon click history also shows Kohberger search for a K-bar knife in the days after the killings. Now, this is huge. Huge. Why is it huge? Why would he be searching for another K-bar knife if he still had his K-bar knife? Well, clearly he lost his K-bar knife at the scene, unless somebody stole his knife. That claim has actually never really been made. I haven't heard of that being made. But he's looking for a replacement knife. That is going to be big in a court of law. Now, the Kohberger's attorneys, their argument here is so stupid, it's unbelievable. Kohberger's attorneys have sought to exclude the online shopping history, saying it could be taken out of context. Any evidence can be taken out of context. I mean, you could say that for everything. That he was driving in the area at the time, taken out of context. That he bought this, taken out of context. That he did a thumbs up after the murders, taken out of context. You could take everything and every crime out of context. But that is the point of where the evidence being presented in court is then the context is left up to the jury. Now, again, I'll say I'm for a professional jury system. Never found that civilian juries make sense to me. 12 people off a bus stop, nice people, well-meaning people, maybe some aren't, but most of them are. They get thrown into a court of law basically they're imprisoned, thrown into a court of law. They have to sit there for God knows how many months of their life, don't get paid, or if they get paid, it's shabby. They have no training. And that's why, especially the defense attorney is going to say, well, these people could take it out of context because they're not trained. They're not trained in psychology. They're not trained in crime. They're not trained in anything. So you put this in there and they'll take it out of context, especially since it's been all over the internet. Of course, the defense attorneys have been all over the internet. Everything has been all over the internet. So nobody's going to arrive in that courtroom without some idea of the crime, unless, some will say, oh, I have never heard of it, but they're probably lying. So anyway, they don't have to take a polygraph. So anyway, Kohberger's attorneys have sought to exclude the online shopping history, saying it could be taken out of context or not reflect the influence of algorithms that recommend purchases. Okay, now this is getting even funnier. So because he bought one before, let's see, I'm trying to figure out. Okay, since he bought one before, they recommended it to him again. Now, there is some truth to that. I will admit that is true. The question is the search history. In other words, I don't know the details on this. We're going to wait maybe this will be in court, and I don't know. If I've purchased something before, yes, it can be recommended to me, and I could click on it. And many things you do buy again. I'm a big Amazon shopper, so people, they'll come up and say, "Aren't you running out of this, and this?" And you go, "Yeah, I am." Click, 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 click. Send it to me. But if I go up there to the search bar and put in K-bar knife, that is a real search. And if he searched, and when is it right here? Okay, right Days after the killings, he searches again for a knife, a K-bar knife. I would like to see how it's presented in court, but I would say if he did indeed, just days after the murders, search of his own free will and it wasn't pushed into it by Amazon, there's a reason he's doing that, and that's because he doesn't have his knife anymore. Prosecutors say they also intend to introduce what appears to be a self-portrait of Kohberger took on his phone 10:31 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, just hours after the killings. In it, he is smiling and giving a thumbs up gesture. Okay, so now this shouldn't be taken out of context in the sense that, is he going thumbs up, I killed 4 people, haha? Maybe. Could it be, hey, it's a good morning? Maybe. We cannot get inside his head on that. So the meaning of this photo is questionable. However, the real import of this photo are the eyebrows. A roommate who was in the rental home sleeping and intoxicated told police she woke up and saw a man she didn't know, someone with, quote, bushy eyebrows, who was wearing a face mask. You know, when you wear a face mask, your eyebrows are like really prominent. And the one thing that person is going to remember are your eyebrows. If you have like a unibrow or really thick brows, that's something they're going to remember. So maybe you should have worn a ski mask, you know, if he's the guy who did it. Defense attorneys, here we go, have asked the judge to exclude from the trial any description of the attacker having bushy eyebrows, saying it could prejudice the jury. What? You're trying to eliminate a witness statement because the jury might listen to the witness statement? What kind of crap is this? I mean, it's like, why don't you just, let's see, exclude. The word is exclude. Why don't you just exclude all the evidence? Exclude the DNA evidence because it might, what's the word here? Prejudice the jury. You know, exclude everything because the jury, every piece of evidence that goes against him is going to prejudice the jury, which is what it is supposed to do. And whatever the defense presents can also prejudice the jury. That's the whole point of the court. I mean, I don't understand how this is, how they can argue this. This is stupid. I mean, there's a prosecution, there's a defense, and they argue back and forth, each one trying to prejudice the jury into siding with them because they believe, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the person is either guilty or not guilty. So if evidence of bushy eyebrows is presented to the jury might well believe that Mr. Kohberger is guilty simply because of bushy eyebrows. Oh my God, maybe he needs new defense attorneys, because if this is their argument, it's so pitiful. It's just embarrassing, really. I mean, maybe that's what it's always done. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't get involved in this kind of stuff. I'm a profiler. I'm just looking at evidence. But it just, to me, it's so ludicrous. It's like, this is just, it's pitiful is what it is. It's pitiful. And now it says here, the court has issued a gag order for everyone involved in the trial and won't allow cameras in the courtroom. That's a very wise thing, I think, personally. Let's see. Here's the other thing. Judge Stephen Hippler has scheduled a hearing for April 9th to consider the pretrial motions. Among those to be decided are arguments over whether an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis will preclude Kohberger from being eligible for the death penalty if convicted. That is nonsense. I did another video on that. First of all, he's never proven to have autism prior to this. Could he be slightly autistic? Sure. Could he be Asperger? Sure. And of course the defense has found they can always find a psychologist to say whatever they want because they're paid to do that. But to say that people have Asperger's or autism on the spectrum of some sort equals murder, that they can't help themselves, and that's why they just have to run into a student home and stab up four people to death. I mean, that's ludicrous. That's absolutely ludicrous. That's like saying, a person who's a psychopath, which he could well be. A person who's a psychopath, they're on a spectrum too. It's a narcissism spectrum. Does that get them out of the death penalty because they can't help themselves? Is that what they're trying to say? It's another stupid argument, in my opinion. And they're also arguing over whether jurors should hear the audio of the 911 call made by 2 women in the house roughly 8 hours after the killings. as they realized one of their roommates wasn't waking up. I guess that again will be prejudicial against him. The court has issued a gag order for everyone involved in the trial and won't allow cameras in the courtroom. All the cases these days, because they become so much of it's on the internet these days, so much influence on the internet. We see that with the Karen Read case. It's absolutely atrocious, the internet stuff on that case. And now, mind you, I do believe that the evidence strongly points to Karen Read being guilty, and the Free Karen Read people, and what's that turtle crap guy? I could use a P word with him, but I'm not allowed to do that. And you all know what the P word means when I say that. But you got this guy, and he's got all these little turtle spawn, and racing around, and now they're going out into public, and they're going out to the victims' homes, and the witnesses' homes, and beating on their doors and terrifying them, and it's horrifying, and this should not be allowed. So I think we're going to have to, because of the internet, we're going to have to get a lot more gag orders in the United States of America and cut down how much information goes out, because, mind you, the prosecution isn't allowed to do that. So it's like all defense stuff coming out all over the place, trying to get people to rise up. And essentially, what they're trying to do is prejudice the jury. That's what the defense always is trying to do with the internet information out there. They're trying to prejudice the jury. And the jury is easily going to have issues with when they hear all this information coming in, and claims and gossip and one-sided stuff coming in, and stuff with a lot of emotion is aroused and all this stuff. They start going, oh yeah, and I think he's innocent. And then they end up in a court of law. And all you need is one to say, I don't think he did it, when the evidence is overwhelming. That we might, I'm not saying it is yet, but if it is overwhelming in court, all you need is one to toss this trial and find him not guilty, because somebody decides that, who has no training. And the other people who might have done a great job in analyzing everything, they can't do anything. It becomes a fight within that room. It often becomes a fight between the people. Sometimes there's bullying in jury rooms. The stronger people bully somebody into changing their determination. This should not be happening. So again, I'm for the professional jury system, which I'm sure I'll get a lot of flack on. But regardless, I think the new information is interesting, and I think that the defense case is very, 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 very weak, but they're going to do everything they can to delay, deny, and to prejudice the incoming jury and of the whole trial, which I find pretty abominable, but that's what the defense is allowed to do in this country. So anyway, those are my thoughts on this. Please put your thoughts below, but please be polite. I do block people who are impolite if I see them. And if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. And I don't talk about this case a lot. I only pop in when I think there's something really worthwhile to talk about. I don't do day-to-day stuff. I'm not a news channel or a gossip channel. So I probably will comment on the case again, but I just don't know when that will be. But again, do like and subscribe, and check my playlist for all the cases I do thoroughly analyze. Thank you for being here, everybody. Bye-bye.